In terms of the issues of numbers and the increase that we've seen in women in parliaments, a lot of people ask, how is it that in Latin America there are increasing numbers of women in parliament and in other elected bodies, and yet that doesn't seem to be the case necessarily in some other regions of the world? How is it that Latin America is better off, really, than pretty much every other region in the world except for Europe? And I think what that masks, and it's a problem, is the great disparities within Latin America. There are a lot of outliers. Within Latin America, as I said, the average percentage is about 22%. But that can go from, for instance, Bolivia, that has 47% women in its Senate, to other countries, such as Brazil or Guatemala, that have percentages below 10%. So in Bolivia, 1 out of every 2 senators is a woman, and yet in countries like Brazil or Guatemala, for instance, it's more like 1 out of every 20. So there are real disparities that we have to look at, and it has a lot to do with the electoral rolls, and it has a lot to do with how the electoral system is designed, the devil's in the detail, and the existence of quotas, although quotas aren't enough. Because even a country like Brazil has gender quotas, and yet what matters is how the quota is designed, how well it's designed, how well it avoids loopholes, which is the case, for instance, in Brazil, if there are sanctions or not for the quotas, and also how compatible the quota is with the electoral system. So we've done a lot of work in IDEA looking at what are some of the models that work in terms of quotas. If a country decides that it wants to promote more equity in terms of its parliament or other elected bodies, and determines that it wants to use electoral reform as an instrument for that, well, what are some of the issues that have to be looked at? And it's critical to really ensure that the system is designed such that it's compatible with the electoral system, that has to be clear sanctions, and it has to look at the devil's in the detail, ensure that all the details are in terms of the electoral design. And then there are also a series of other factors that we're seeing changing in Latin America as more women are entering in politics. We're also seeing public opinion becoming more and more friendly or conducive to the election of women. Even though women often compete in a disadvantageous position in terms of they have less funding for their campaigns, or they get less press coverage, and that's something we've been able to document here in Peru, for instance. Voters still want to elect women. There's a real interest, I think, on the part of voters to see more women in parliament and in local and municipal governments.